Welcome to my YouTube channel. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over, the kind of moment that feels like pure luck but is actually hiding in plain sight for millions of people right now, because today we're talking about the 1984 1-cent coin, a seemingly ordinary penny that most people wouldn't even glance at twice, yet under the right conditions, with the right details, this tiny copper-colored coin has been linked to jaw-dropping collector values reaching up to an unbelievable $70 million, and before you brush that off as just hype, you need to understand that rare coins like this don't scream their value, they whisper it through tiny details, minting quirks, and historical accidents that only a trained eye or a lucky find can reveal. So stick with me all the way to the end, because this is just the beginning and the next coins we'll uncover later could be hiding even more shocking secrets that most people never notice. Now let's get into why the 1984 penny has captured so much attention in the world of coin collecting, because on the surface, it looks completely normal, minted during a time when billions of pennies were produced across different U.S. mints including Philadelphia and Denver, making it one of the most common coins in circulation. But here's where things get interesting. Because rarity in coin collecting is not about how many were made, it's about how many exist with specific unusual features. And in 1984, the U.S. Mint was still adjusting to major changes that had occurred just a couple of years earlier when the composition of pennies shifted from mostly copper to a zinc core with a thin copper plating, and that transition period created opportunities for errors, misstrikes, and subtle design anomalies that today can turn a 1-cent coin into a collector's dream. One of the most talked about varieties of the 1984 penny is the double die obverse, a minting error where the design appears slightly duplicated, especially noticeable in the inscriptions like Liberty and the date itself, and while many people might overlook this as wear or damage, experienced collectors know that true double dies are rare and highly sought after. And when one of these coins is found in near perfect condition, its value skyrockets beyond what most people would ever imagine. For a penny, and that's just one example, because there are also off-center strikes, where the coin design is not properly aligned, clipped planchets where part of the coin is literally missing, and even transitional errors where the metal composition doesn't match what was intended for that year. But let's talk about the real reason some versions of the 1984 penny have been associated with massive value estimates, and that comes down to condition and uniqueness, because in the world of numismatics, a coin graded at the highest levels, meaning it has virtually no wear, no scratches, and retains its original luster, can be exponentially more valuable than the same coin in average condition. And when you combine that with a rare error or an unusual minting feature, you create a perfect storm of desirability among collectors, the kind that leads to intense bidding wars at auctions where prices climb higher and higher as collectors compete to own something truly unique. There have been stories of individuals discovering rare pennies in old jars, inherited collections, or even pocket change, only to realize later that what they had was far from ordinary, and while not every 1984 penny is valuable, the possibility that one could be is what keeps collectors searching, examining, and holding on to their coins instead of spending them. Because the difference between a 1-cent coin and a life-changing discovery often comes down to a few tiny details that most people would never notice. And here's the thing that makes this even more exciting: the hunt is still ongoing, because coins like this are still out there, mixed in with everyday currency, sitting unnoticed in drawers, piggy banks, and forgotten containers, waiting for someone curious enough to take a closer look, and that could be you, because the truth is, most people spend these coins without a second thought. completely unaware that they might be holding something incredibly rare. Now while we're diving deeper into this 1984 penny, keep this in mind, because later on we're going to talk about another coin that takes this idea of hidden value to a whole different level, and trust me, you won't want to miss it, because if this penny already sounds unbelievable, the next one will challenge everything you think you know about pocket change. Back to the 1984 penny, another factor that drives its potential value is historical context, because coins are more than just currency, they are pieces of history, and every year of minting tells a story about economic conditions, production methods, and even political decisions, and collectors love coins that represent transitional periods or unusual circumstances, because they offer a glimpse into moments when something didn't go exactly as planned, and those imperfections are what make them valuable today. For example, if a small batch of pennies was struck using the wrong die or with a slight misalignment during production, those coins might have slipped into circulation unnoticed, and over time, as most of them were spent or lost, the few remaining examples became incredibly rare, and that rarity is what fuels demand in the collector market, because collectors aren't just buying coins, they're buying stories, uniqueness, and the thrill of owning something that very few people in the world have. And let's be real for a second, the idea that a simple penny could be worth millions sounds almost too good to be true, but that's exactly what makes coin collecting so addictive, because every coin has the potential to surprise you, and every discovery feels like unlocking a hidden treasure, and even if you don't find $1 million coin right away, the process of searching, learning, and understanding what makes a coin valuable is rewarding in itself. So the next time you come across a 1984 penny, don't just toss it aside, take a moment to examine it, look closely at the details, check for any unusual features, and remember that what looks ordinary at first glance could be anything but, because as we've seen, the difference between a common coin and a rare one can be incredibly subtle, and that's exactly why so many valuable coins go unnoticed for years. And before we wrap this up, let me remind you again, don't go anywhere, because coming up next is another coin that pushes this concept even further, a coin that most people have seen but very few truly understand, and if you thought the 1984 penny was surprising, the next one will leave you questioning every coin you've ever spent, because sometimes the smallest details hide the biggest secrets. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1991 1-cent USA coin. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away, and lose a fortune, and that's exactly what makes the 1991 1-cent penny one of the most talked about modern Lincoln cents among collectors today, because while it looks like everyday pocket change, certain rare variations tied to minting mistakes, die clashes, and unusual strike conditions have pushed rumors and documented auction excitement into the kind of territory where people start whispering about values reaching up to an unbelievable $80 million, and before you dismiss that number, remember that coin history is full of surprises where the smallest error becomes the biggest payday, so stay locked in, because by the end of this you'll never look at a 1991 penny the same way again, and everything you thought you knew about just 1 cent is about to flip completely upside down. Now let's get straight into the early shock factor, because the most important thing you need to understand about the 1991 Lincoln cent is that it was produced in massive numbers by both the Philadelphia and Denver mints during a time when the U.S. Mint was operating at extremely high output efficiency, meaning billions of coins were being struck and released into circulation, which normally would make them common and forgettable, but in coin collecting, high mintage does not automatically mean low value, because hidden inside those massive production runs are the mistakes, the anomalies, and the experimental strikes that were never meant to leave the mint, and those are the coins that collectors chase with obsession, and when one of those rare errors appears in pristine condition, that's when the value explosion happens, sometimes reaching numbers that sound unreal for something that started as a single cent. The 1991 penny is especially interesting because it sits in a transitional era of modern minting where quality control systems were advanced but not perfect, and even small inconsistencies in die polishing, metal striking pressure, or planchet preparation could result in visible differences that transform an ordinary coin into a collector's target. And one of the most discussed varieties is the double die obverse, where the lettering and design elements appear slightly duplicated, often visible in inscriptions like "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and the date itself, and while casual observers might think it's just wear or damage, true double die coins have a distinct separation in the design caused during the die creation process, making them genuinely rare and highly desirable. But that's only the beginning, because another category that drives interest in the 1991 penny is the mint error spectrum, including off-center strikes where the coin's design is shifted dramatically to one side, clipped planchets where part of the metal blank is missing due to improper cutting, and struck through errors where foreign material like grease or debris interferes with the impression of the design, leaving unusual textures or missing details that collectors find fascinating, because each error tells a story of something that went wrong during production, and in numismatics, imperfection is often perfection in disguise. Now let's talk about why some collectors and online discussions attach extreme value estimates to specific 1991 pennies, because while most of them are worth exactly 1 cent, the rare combinations of high-grade condition, verified mint errors, and exceptional visual appeal can cause auction prices to spike dramatically, especially when multiple factors align in a single coin, and when that happens, bidding wars can escalate quickly among serious collectors who are not just buying currency but investing in rarity, history, and prestige, and that competitive environment is what fuels the legendary stories you hear about pennies selling for thousands or even millions in rare cases tied to extraordinary uniqueness. The grading system plays a massive role here, because a coin graded at MS65, MS66, or higher by professional grading services is considered to be in near perfect condition, meaning it has minimal marks, strong luster, and sharp details, and when a rare error coin is found in that level of preservation, its value multiplies dramatically compared to a worn example, because condition is everything in coin collecting, and even the rarest coin loses appeal if it looks damaged or heavily circulated. Another fascinating aspect of the 1991 penny is the psychological effect it has on collectors and everyday people alike, because it represents something everyone has seen but almost no one pays attention to, and that creates a powerful illusion that valuable coins must always look special or different at first glance, when in reality, some of the most valuable discoveries are hiding in plain sight, sitting in coin jars, old wallets, or even still passing through circulation unnoticed, and that's what keeps the hunt alive, because the idea that life-changing value could be sitting inside something so ordinary is incredibly compelling. There are also stories within the collector community about people finding unusual 1991 pennies in inherited collections, estate sales, or bankroll hunting, where rolls of coins are purchased and searched manually for errors, and while most of the time the results are ordinary, every so often someone spots a coin that looks slightly off, slightly different, or slightly unusual, and that, slightly, is what leads to deeper investigation, professional grading, and sometimes shocking valuation. Outcomes that no one expected at the start. What makes this even more interesting is that modern coins like the 1991 penny are often underestimated compared to older coins, because people assume age equals value, but in reality, rarity is driven by scarcity of specific features, not just age. And that means even relatively recent coins can outperform older ones if they contain the right combination of minting anomalies and preservation quality, and that flips traditional thinking on its head for many new collectors. Now imagine this for a moment: a coin that was originally worth 1 cent, produced in billions, passing through countless hands, ignored in pockets and piggy banks, suddenly becoming the center of attention decades later because of a tiny minting mistake no one noticed at the time. That's the magic of numismatics, and that's exactly why coins like the 1991 penny continue to fascinate collectors across the world. And here's where things get even more intense, because experts often stress that the real challenge is not identifying that a coin exists, but recognizing its significance when you actually hold it, because many valuable coins are spent simply because nobody bothered to look closely, and that's a mistake that happens every single day, which is why stories of lost treasures in circulation never really stop. So if you ever come across a 1991 penny, don't just treat it like spare change, study it, compare it, and most importantly understand that in the world of coins, value is not always loud or obvious, sometimes it's silent and waiting. And just when you think this story can't get any more surprising, remember this is only one piece of a much larger hidden world of coins that most people never notice. And while this 1991 penny already bends belief with its potential rarity and extreme valuation stories, the deeper you go into coin collecting, the more you realize that every coin has a secret waiting to be uncovered. Every mint mark tells a story, and every error is a clue to something rare. But here's the final thought to leave you with: if something as simple as a penny from 1991 can carry this much mystery and value potential, imagine what other coins might still be sitting in your hands right now, completely unnoticed. And that's where the real adventure begins, because in the world of coins, the next discovery is always one glance away.